Hi guys, here's a very quick quiz review before our quiz tomorrow over solving by factoring and solving by completing the square. So first of all, solve. In this particular problem, the quadratic expression is already factored. If it's already factored, then set each factor equal to 0 and solve for the two solutions. So 6x minus 5 equals 0, plus 5, plus 5, 6x equals 5, divide by 6, divide by 6, x equals 5/6. There's the first answer. Take the second factor, set it equal to 0, minus 4, minus 4, 7x equals negative 4. Be careful with your signs. Divide by 7, divide by 7, x equals negative 4/7. So remember on your quiz tomorrow, you can just enter in this as the answer. Just the answer separated by commas, a simple x equals. So I've got lots of options set up for you to be able to plug in your answers. Number two is not already factored. So we do need to put it in standard form and set equal to 0. So we can easily put this one into standard form by taking this 12 that is positive on the right and moving it to the left. It will be negative on the left. So 10x squared minus 7x minus 12 equals 0. So remember, we want it in descending order, 2, 1, and none. That is standard form. After we get it in standard form and set equal to 0, we're going to try to factor here. And factors of 10, 2x, 5x, factors of negative 12, it's either 2 and 6 or 3 and 4. But if we want a negative 7 in the middle, it would make sense to have 3 times 5 is 15, and 2 times 4 is 8. So if we make 15 negative and 8 positive, that will give us the negative 7 in the middle. There's our 8, there's our negative 15 to give us negative 7 in the middle. Of course, 2 times 5x is 10x squared. Negative 3 times 4 is where we get the negative 12. So I just checked it. Set each factor equal to 0. That's step 3. Plus 3, plus 3. 2x equals 3. Divide by 2, divide by 2. X equals 3 halves. There's the first solution. Second solution, minus 4, minus 4. 5x equals negative 4. Divide by 5, divide by 5. Our second solution, negative 4/5. So if it's already factored, then set each factor equal to 0 and go. Step 1 was necessary here for number 2. Put in standard form, which means 2, 1, and none. Then factor, set each factor equal to 0 and solve. 3 and 4. Number 3 only has 2 terms. And this second term does not have an x value. That's the helpful hint to know that you can solve this by the square root property. So to solve using the square root property, we want to isolate the squared term. Well, there's the squared term. We need to get it by itself. So I'm going to start by adding 81 to both sides, which gives me 16x squared equals 81. And I hope you're noticing that both 16 and 81 are both perfect squares. So we can divide both sides by 16, and we get x squared equals 81 over 16. And 81 over 16 can very easily be dealt with when we take the square root of each side, because the square root undoes the square. I'll move to the right here. X equals plus or minus the square root of 81 is 9. The square root of 16 is 4. So plus or minus 9/4. You can easily show this in our Google Form quiz with positive 9/4, comma, negative 9/4. So number 4, another problem to use the square root property. Why? Because the perfect square is already isolated. Remember, this quantity 3x plus 5 is being squared. So this is a perfect square. So we can go to step 2, which is to take the square root of both sides. Remember that the square root will undo that square, bringing 3x plus 5 out. The square root of 100 is plus or minus 10. We're not done yet because we now need to set up our two equations. 3x plus 5 equals positive 10, or 3x plus 5 equals negative 10. Solve both of these separately to get your values for x. Minus 5, 3x equals 5. Divide by 3, divide by 3. There's our first answer. X equals 5/3. This is going to give us our second answer. Minus 5, 3x equals negative 15. Pay attention to the signs, please. Divide by 3, divide by 3. Negative 15 divided by 3 is negative 5. So there's our two answers. Remember, these are quadratic. Two answers, two answers. 5 and 6, last two problems in this very short video. Number 5, once again, only two terms, and the second term does not have an x value. If the second term does not have an x value, it would make sense to solve this one by the square root property. So we're going to move that positive 160 to the other side, which is the same thing as subtracting 160 from both sides. We end up with negative 4x squared equals negative 160. Our job here is to isolate the squared term. So from here, we are going to divide by negative 4 because that's going to get x squared all by itself. That's what we're after. We want that squared term isolated. So x squared equals negative 160 divided by negative 4. That's positive 40. Now 40 is not a perfect square. So when I solve for x by taking the square root of both sides, I got to do a little bit of work here. Remember, it's plus or minus the square root of 40. But before I plug in anything, I'm going to make a factor ladder for 40. 40 divided by 2 is 20. 20 divided by 2 is 10. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So 40 is 2 to the third times 5 to the first. Think about all the things we've talked about in class, remembering that this square root has an index of 2. So when we simplify this radical, our answers, two of them, plus or minus 2 goes into 3 one whole time with 1 power of 2 left under. And then will 2 go into 1? No. So the 5 stays under. Should have put those a little closer together. So final best answer here, x equals plus or minus 2, which is outside the radical, and underneath the radical is 2 times 5, which is 10. Best answers right there. The square root of 40 in simplest radical terms is square root, or 2 times the square root of 10. Next, also on our quiz, you're going to see a question that says, can you solve this using the square root property? I hope you look at this problem and go, well, why would I need to use the square root property when clearly they both have an x and both of these numbers have a greatest common factor of 5? So the first thing we need to do in this problem, the best thing we can do, is to factor out the greatest common factor. And really the giveaway here is this x. This second term having an x to the first power basically tells me, no, I cannot solve this with the square root property. So if I bring out the 5x, 5 divided by 5 is 1, x squared divided by x is x, 100 divided by 5 is 20, x divided by x is 1, so it cancels. So I get two very simple factors here. Once it is factored, set each factor equal to 0. And 5 times what equals 0? Well, that would be 0. X is 0. On the other side, minus 20, x equals negative 20. So our solutions are 0 and negative 20. So these 6 problems are ones very similar that you're going to see on your homework/regular quiz tomorrow. It's a big quiz, which is why I'm making this review video. Hope you all are having a great day.